Welcome to Authentically Aligned, a space where growth is rooted in safety, reconnection happens through the nervous system, and we return home to ourselves. Today's topic of discussion is our identity and how some of our identities were created around a season or a time in our life when we were stuck in survival mode. And how now we tend to identify with some of these habits, some of these beliefs, some of these feelings inside of our nervous system that we became accustomed to inside of surviving. Many of us are living from identities that were created in survival mode. And these identities that were created were not mistakes, but they were adaptations. They were things that we adapted to, or we got used to, or we found comfort in order to survive. They helped us to navigate difficult environments, expectations, pressure, and even emotional uncertainty. But as we grow and as we evolve, sometimes the patterns that we created in order to survive become the very things that begin to hold us back or keep us from becoming the best or greatest version of ourselves. They begin to place limits on the life that we could have and allow us to stay stuck in the life that we do have. Inside of this, recognizing that you are not wrong and you didn't make a mistake for becoming who you needed to be in those moments or in that season of your life. But also recognizing that you don't have to stay in that season forever. This episode explores how to recognize identity that you built in survival mode and how you can begin to grow and evolve beyond those identifications. I had a wonderful conversation with a client the other day, and this specific client is in the process of grieving, and he is in the process of grieving his old self and recognizing the parts and the identity of his old self that he needs to let go of, but also realizing that this version of himself was at one point, and maybe still partially is, his best friend. It was the version of himself that helped him to get through so many seasons of life and so many scenarios and circumstances and situations. And he admitted that it almost felt wrong to be letting go of this version of himself. And him and I discussed that while he recognizes he does have to grieve this version of himself, and he has to have the desire to let go of this version of himself, inside of this, he also has the opportunity to create a new identity and a new version of himself that actually is rooted in safety and creates safety and security and an environment and a life that is conducive to that. The young child version of himself now is a grown adult version of himself who gets to make choices and isn't fearful of making choices and understands that he has autonomy over his life, whereas maybe as a child he did not. So as we dive into this episode, exploring the idea that we have to grieve these old identities. We have to be willing to say goodbye and willing to let go. And inside of that, it is not easy. We have to let go of parts of ourselves that once brought us comfort and once brought us safety. And recognize that now these parts of ourselves that are bringing us comfort and safety are actually the parts of ourselves that are holding us back from the life that we desire to live and from becoming the greatest version and the best version of ourselves. A lot of our episodes recently have focused on nervous system and nervous system regulation and being able to identify when your nervous system is activated. And as we talk about what it looks like to be in survival mode, that is a perfect example of your nervous system doing its job. When your nervous system feels unsafe or under pressure, it prioritizes stability and it prioritizes protection over authenticity. So rather than being real and doing what is best for you, it comes from a place of protection. And through this place of protection, decisions are made that are not in alignment with your authenticity. And this is where and how our bodies, our minds, our spirits, our nervous systems get into this state of survival mode. Because our nervous system has so much power that if we allow it to, it will consistently place us in a state of survival mode. Being stuck in this place of survival mode can look like constantly overfunctioning, staying busy to avoid slowing down or finding stillness, overthinking outcomes, trying to control situations, and feeling responsible for everything around you. Feeling responsible for everyone and everything around you. Being stuck in survival mode can look like being highly productive while quietly being disconnected from yourself. And when your body is seeking safety, self-expression becomes secondary. That gets put on the back burner. And our mind and our body and our nervous system will do whatever necessary to create safety in that moment, even if it isn't the best decision for us. What's interesting is through the years of being in survival mode, allowing yourself to stay in survival mode, we believe that these things become personality traits. We begin to identify with these things. But rather than being personality traits, they're really just adaptations to our environment, to our circumstances. And as we grow and as we evolve, it is our responsibility and our job to recognize where we adapted when we shouldn't have. Where we adapted when all we were trying to do was keep ourselves safe. These roles or personality traits that many of us step into and then become our identity or we identify with looks like the overachiever, the responsible one, the fixer, the caretaker, the one who never needs help, the one who does everything for everybody else at the sacrifice of themselves. And these identities can also show up as the one who is always trying to control a situation or always feels like they have to be in control. It can also look like putting everybody else's needs ahead of your own, sacrificing your peace, your energy to keep everything running smoothly, and trying to solve uncertainty by giving more energy. At some point, we have to realize, I had to realize, I wasn't just showing up for life. I was slowly abandoning myself to keep the world around me, everything around me, stable. When instead, a more mindful practice would have been to keep myself stable. These identities have helped you, have helped me to navigate certain seasons. But right now, in this moment, they may no longer reflect who I am or who you are. What identities have you taken on out of adaptation? What roles have you taken on to keep everything stable, to keep everything in order? And inside of that, have you forgotten about your own stability? These identity shifts only begin with awareness. The change to our identity, the growth that we desire, begins with awareness. And at some point, you begin to notice and recognize the patterns that no longer align with the life that you desire to live. You recognize where things are feeling inauthentic, and you recognize when you're being untrue to yourself. As you continue your awareness and you start to recognize these things, maybe it looks like you noticing constant exhaustion, no matter how much rest you get. Feeling disconnected from joy or peace or happiness. Feeling like you're living responsibly rather than with intention. Living from the shoulds. I should do this, I should do this, I should do this. But are all of these shoulds that you're moving from with intention to your purpose and your life and your personal identity? Maybe you notice that you are always the one that is holding everything together. For everybody, for everything. But at what point do you need to hold it together for yourself? The discomfort is a clear signal. It becomes the signal. And the discomfort isn't the problem, but it's the message. The discomfort becomes the signal that tells you, that shows you that the old version of you isn't sustainable anymore. That the old version of you is no longer serving you, is no longer benefiting you, is no longer keeping you safe. But the old version of you is what's continuously holding you back. As you continue to experience this awareness, this is the awareness that is the catalyst for change, for growth, and for you to step into your new identity. The identity that is true to you and in alignment with everything that you are. Now, like I mentioned at the beginning of the episode, these things come with grief. The change, the awareness, the understanding, it all has a process of grievance. Because as you begin to outgrow these survival identities and habits and beliefs, while you grieve them, you also get to, but are required to, create new habits and beliefs toward your new identity. And because that version of you worked so hard to create safety, to create security, because that version of you carried so much responsibility and so much weight, and because that version of you did any and everything necessary to move forward, you absolutely have to grieve these things. This is a version of you that, as you grieve, should be celebrated, because at that time, in that moment, you were taking care of yourself the best way that you knew how. And now, having the awareness that you do as an adult, as a wiser, more evolved version of yourself, you recognize the healthy ways in which now you can create and provide safety and security for yourself without placing your body, your spirit, your mind, your nervous system into survival mode. And as you let go of this version of yourself, it doesn't mean that you are rejecting this version of yourself. It doesn't mean that this version of yourself was a bad version of yourself. It just means that this new, improved version of yourself no longer resonates with this old version of yourself. There's levels to life. And when we see it as that, and when we see it as continuing to grow our tools, our armor, our knowledge, our wisdom, when we continue to grow all of these things, we're expanding. But we also recognize that we can't hold on to all of the negative traits that aren't serving us in this season of life. All of these things served us in a past season. But each season requires different tools. It requires different understanding. It requires to show up in a different version of ourself. And if we continuously hold on to everything that has carried us through every season, the weight and the heaviness that we're going to continue to experience is endless. Now, don't get me wrong. There are absolutely things that we have used that will still be beneficial for us in this season and in seasons in the future. But it is your job to recognize what are the things that you took on as an identity out of adaptation in order to adapt to the environment, to somebody else's emotions or expectations, and allowing yourself to let go of any of those things that are no longer in alignment with your season of growth. I saw a really powerful message the other day, and the premise of what I saw was if a snake were to hold on to all of the skin that it has shed throughout its life, the snake wouldn't be able to see, it wouldn't be able to carry its own weight, it wouldn't be able to move through the world, wouldn't be able to move through life. And I thought that that was a perfect representation of this conversation, because it is your responsibility to shed. It is your responsibility to grieve and let go of, so that a better, cleaner, lighter, more connected version of yourself can shine through every single day. Now, as we let go of this old identity, we get to create a new identity. We get to choose everything that's important to us. We get to choose how we take care of ourselves, how we nourish ourselves, how we pour into ourselves, the environments that we place ourselves in, the energy that we hold, and the energy that we let go of. And what a beautiful and exciting time to be able to create new identities in multiple different seasons of your life. So as you let go of these past identities, maybe stepping into this new version of yourself looks like someone who stays grounded without feeling the need to control. Maybe it looks like somebody who listens to their own needs instead of ignoring them or placing them on the back burner. Maybe it looks like being somebody who allows uncertainty while things unfold, finding comfort in the discomfort, knowing that everything that is happening for you and not to you. Maybe this is somebody who keeps their own life steady, who stays solid in their purpose and knows how to keep their nervous system regulated. by creating safety for themselves. Something like, the new version of me doesn't operate from pressure or fear. She shows up fully, but at the same time stays rooted in herself. That is an example of an identity that is built from alignment rather than from survival. Your identity change happens through daily decisions, daily habits, daily choices that you make. Little by little, being able to stack these things. And little by little, you become a new version of yourself. You identify as somebody new, improved, and evolved. Being able to regulate your nervous system throughout the day inside of heated moments. Where do you find regulation? Where do you create space? What are your practices to bring yourself back to a grounded point? Redirecting your focus to your own life and your own purpose without feeling the need to fulfill expectations of others, without feeling the need to take on the emotions of others, allowing situations to unfold, and choosing activities every single day that help you to reconnect with yourself. If you are consistently choosing activities or partaking in things that are keeping you disconnected from yourself, you're not only abandoning yourself, disrespecting yourself, but you are stepping further and further away from your true identity. And each time you partake in an activity that does bring you closer to yourself, you practice coming closer to yourself, every single step is bringing you to exactly who you are supposed to be, being authentically aligned with yourself. For me, those things look like taking care of my body, eating nourishing meals, taking care of my mind. And when I do find myself in an anxious state, finding and using practices that keep me regulated, whether it be breath work or going to a yoga class or reading a book or going for a walk or getting in the cold plunge. But continuously stepping into these practices that make you the greatest and the best version of yourself. These are all small but powerful ways of choosing alignment with yourself. At the end of the day, your life, your nervous system, your emotions, your feelings are your choice. And everything that you choose is a direct reflection of your identity. And as you take inventory of this, recognize the things that you want to continue to identify with and the things that you absolutely don't want to continue to identify with. There is going to be a shift that happens. You have to shift. You have to change. But when you make this shift, and when you choose to step out of the survival identity, you become less reactive. Your nervous system stabilizes. Your choices feel more intentional. And your energy returns back to you. Your strength is not about surviving, but your strength is about allowing yourself to live. And unfortunately, sometimes the version of ourselves that helped us to survive is the same version of ourselves that prevents us from truly living. As always, I'm going to leave you with a journal prompt for the week. What parts of my identity were built in survival? And what parts of my identity am I ready to rediscover? As you move through your week this week, notice the things that stayed with you. And remember that integration happens slowly and quietly. If this episode resonated with you, please share it with somebody in need. It helps us to share this space. I'm sending you so much love and light this week.